This is a story of a doctor, a satchel, and a sign that the doctor hung on a hitching post. It's the legend of Old Doc Brown. He was just an old country doctor in a little Kentucky town. Fame and fortune had passed him by, but we never saw him frown. And as day by day in his kindly way, why, he served us one and all. Many a patient forgot to pay, although Doc's fees were small. But old Doc Brown didn't seem to mind, why, he didn't even send out bills. His only ambition was to find, it seemed, a sure cure for aches and ills. Why, nearly half the folks in my hometown, yes, I'm one of them too, who were ushered in by old Doc Brown when we made our first debut. And he needed his dimes, and there were times that he'd receive a fee. He would pass it on to some poor soul that needed it worse than he. And when depression had hit our town and drained each meager purse, why, the scanty income of old Doc Brown just went from bad to worse. He had to sell all of his furniture, why, he couldn't even pay his office rent. So to a dusty room up over a livery stable, Doc Brown and his satchel went. And on the hitching post, the curb below, to advertise his wares, he nailed a little sign that read, Doc Brown has moved upstairs. And there he went on helping folks get well, and his heart was as good as gold. But anyone with eyes could see that Doc was growing old. And then one day he didn't answer when he knocked upon his door, and old Doc Brown was lying down, but his soul on this earth was no more. They found him there in an old black suit, and on his face was a smile of content. But all the money that they could find on him was a quarter and a copper cent. So they opened up his ledger, and what we saw gave our hearts a pull. It reminded us of what Jesus said when he died on Calvary's cross to pay for all of mankind's sins. For beside each debtor's name, Doc had writ these words, paid in full. It looked like the potter's bill for Doc, and that caused just some alarm. And then someone remembered the family graveyard out on the Simmons farm. Doc had brought 6 of their children, and Simmons, he was a grateful cuss. He said, why, Doc's been like one of the family, so you can let him sleep with us. And Doc should have had a funeral fine enough for a king. It's a ghastly joke that our town was broke and no one could give a thing. Except for Jones the Undertaker, why, he did mighty well by donating an old iron casket that he'd never been able to sell. And the funeral procession, it wasn't much for grace and pomp and style, but those wagon loads of mourners, why, they stretched out for more than a mile. And we breathed a prayer as we laid him there to rest beneath the sod. This man who'd spent his whole life doing things to help other folks and giving all the praises to God. His grave was covered with flowers, but not from the floral shops. There were just roses and things from folks' gardens and 1 or 2 dandelion tops. For depression that hit our little town hard, and each man carried a load. And some just picked the wildflowers as they passed along the road. We wanted to give him a monument, kind of figured that we owed him one, for he had made our town a much better place to live for all the good he'd done. But monuments cost money, and so we did the best we could. And on his grave we gently placed a monument made out of wood. We pulled up that old hitching post where Doc had nailed his sign, and we painted it white, and to all of us, why, it certainly did look fine. But now the rains and snows have washed away our white trimmings of paint, and there's nothing left now but Doc's own sign, and even that's getting faint. But still, when southern breezes and twinkling stars caress our sleeping town, and the pale moon shines through Kentucky pines on the grave of old Doc Brown, why, you can still see that old hitching post as if in answer to our prayers, beautifully telling the whole wide world that Doc Brown has moved upstairs. Thank you.